Meryl Streep once said that during the filming of an early movie, she was shocked when she saw a large handprint mark on her face after an intense scene. She later explained that the moment startled her, but it also pushed her into the emotional state she needed for the character she was playing. What happened on that set in 1979 would stay with her for decades. It shaped how she felt about working with certain people and left her carrying a memory she never discussed publicly until many years later. In interviews she gave around 2018, she finally spoke about what bothered her during that time and what she experienced while acting alongside Dustin Hoffman. She did not present her experience as an official accusation, but rather as her personal memory of events, and the details surprised many people in Hollywood. Before those difficult moments, Meryl Streep had already lived a life shaped by creativity, discipline, and constant transformation. She was born Mary Louise Streep on June 22, 1949, in Summit, New Jersey. Her mother, Mary Wilkinson Streep, was a talented commercial artist who worked for a local newspaper. She loved drawing, painting, and filling their home with color and imagination. Her father, Harry William Streep Jr., worked in pharmaceuticals, providing a stable and structured environment at home. He was quiet, steady, and supportive. It was her father who started calling her Meryl, a nickname he made up by blending sounds from her given names. She was named after her mother, her grandmother, and a family friend named Louise Buckman, connecting her identity to several generations before her. The Streep home in Basking Ridge was full of creativity but not pressure. Her parents encouraged their children gently. They didn't shout advice or demand success. They simply let their kids follow whatever they seemed good at. Meryl grew up with two younger brothers, Harry and Dana, both of whom later became actors as well. Dana eventually married Mary Beth Simon, linking the family to U.S. political history, because her father was Treasury Secretary William Simon. Even though their lives took unusual turns, their home was warm and supportive, with a mother who continually reminded them that if they put in real effort, they could succeed at anything, and a father who quietly backed their dreams without making a fuss. Meryl's artistic training began earlier than most. At 12 years old, she started traveling into New York City to take opera lessons from Estelle Liebling, one of the most respected vocal teachers of the 20th century. Liebling had trained dozens of Metropolitan Opera singers and had once toured with John Philip Sousa. Under her guidance, Meryl learned advanced breathing techniques, how to project her voice, and how to control her tone with precision. But even with all that training, opera didn't give her joy. She loved the excitement of school, spending time with friends, cheerleading, and the normal chaos of teenage life. Singing long, difficult pieces in languages she didn't understand felt empty. After 4 years, she made the bold decision to quit. Later in life, she said this was her first major lesson as an artist: never force yourself to feel something you don't truly feel. Authentic emotion mattered more than perfection. In her early school years, Meryl was quiet and somewhat shy, especially when she compared herself to her mother, who she described as charming and social, someone who could light up a room. But even though she wasn't loud or attention-seeking, she had a special ability. She could switch her personality on and off instantly. She could be quiet 1 minute and magnetic the next. At Cedar Hill Elementary and Oak Street School, she tried acting for the first time. In one school play, she played Louise Heller in The Family Upstairs. She also attended church services with her Catholic friends even though she was raised Presbyterian. Those early choices taught her how to adapt to different environments and understand different perspectives, skills that later became essential in her acting. Her childhood had many playful moments too. At 8 years old, she won a costume contest at Camp Alcott by dressing up as a little old lady, walking with a cane, and performing the role with surprising commitment for such a young child. At home, she often entertained her brothers with silly voices, exaggerated faces, and impressions of adults. She had no idea she was already training herself for the career she would one day have. She sometimes felt awkward, tall, frizzy hair, glasses, not always confident, but she was learning how to transform herself into anyone she wanted to be. By the time she reached her senior year at Bernards High School in 1966, she had changed dramatically. After her family moved to Bernardsville in 1963, she slowly grew more confident. She became a varsity cheerleader and was crowned homecoming queen at 17. A local newspaper described her as a pretty blonde honor student with blue eyes. She acted in school musicals too, playing characters such as Marion the Librarian in The Music Man and Daisy May in Liel Abner. But she still lived between two worlds. Part of her loved performing and being noticed. Another part of her smoked behind the school with her friends, trying hard to blend in. She damaged her singing voice during those years, but she didn't mind. Opera was behind her. A better path was waiting. In 1967, Meryl enrolled at Vassar College. She originally planned to study law, believing that she needed a serious career. But during her early days there, a professor commented that she was too pretty to be taken seriously in theater. Instead of discouraging her, the remark pushed her to prove him wrong. She changed her major and committed herself to acting with incredible intensity. During her 4 years at Vassar, she appeared in around 40 plays, experimenting with different characters, accents, and voices. In one role, she developed 27 distinct vocal tones. She often sat in diners, secretly recording people's conversations so she could imitate them later in her dorm room. By 1971, she had mastered multiple regional accents and could shift between them effortlessly during a single performance. Her professors began saying she might be the best actress of her generation. That same year, she earned a place at the Yale School of Drama, one of the hardest programs to enter. Only 16 students were accepted. Over 2 years, she acted in about 40 plays, barely slept, and lost weight from constant pressure. She smoked backstage, rushed between roles, memorized thousands of lines, and performed gender-bending characters like her male soldier in Henry V, which fooled the audience until the final bow. Her classmate Sigourney Weaver later said that Meryl's total commitment sometimes scared her because she never broke character, not even backstage. During final exams at Yale, Meryl performed in 3 different plays at once, running from one stage to another and changing costumes in bathroom stalls. By graduation, she had memorized over 10,000 lines of classical text. In 1975, she stepped onto a Broadway stage for the first time. Her role paid only $150 a week, barely enough to cover her $200 rent in Hell's Kitchen, but critics were immediately impressed. The following year brought a performance that left audiences stunned. She played a vulnerable and emotionally damaged woman in Tennessee Williams' 27 Wagons Full of Cotton. Williams himself came to see the production 3 times, telling her that she captured Southern life better than someone born in Mississippi. She gained 20 pounds for the role and perfected a thick Mississippi accent by spending 2 weeks talking to truck drivers in Alabama. For all 8 weeks of the production, she stayed in character, never dropping the accent even at social events. During this period, she also worked off-Broadway, performing in classics like The Cherry Orchard and Measure for Measure. The pay was modest, but she gave everything to each role. In 1975, during a production in Central Park, a sudden downpour soaked her in the middle of a scene, but she kept going. A critic later called it one of the most powerful moments of the decade. To survive financially, she waited tables until late at night and showed up for rehearsals early the next morning. Exhaustion never stopped her. In 1977, her life changed dramatically. She made her film debut in Julia, a small role lasting less than 3 minutes. She earned $2,500 and was so nervous before filming that she threw up twice. The director almost removed her scene, but someone watching the footage noticed her presence and insisted it stay. That same year, she faced devastating personal heartbreak. Her partner, actor John Cazale, known for his powerful roles in the Godfather films, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. They had been together since 1976 and were inseparable. When she accepted a role in The Deer Hunter, she did so mainly to stay close to him. When the studio discovered he was dying and tried to remove him from the film, she stood up for him and threatened to quit. She even paid his insurance costs herself. She wrote many of her own lines for the movie because she needed her character's words to feel real while she was watching the man she loved fade away. Cazale died on March 12, 1978. Meryl read a sonnet at his funeral, then withdrew from the world for 3 days. She later said that her grief during that time shaped her understanding of emotion more than any acting class ever could. Only 6 months later, She met sculptor Don Gummer while she was moving out of the apartment she had shared with Khazali. Their connection grew quickly, and they married later that year. They would go on to build a long and supportive life together and raise 4 children. Shortly after Khazali's death, Meryl accepted a leading role in the television miniseries Holocaust, partly to pay off lingering medical expenses. When it aired in 1978, more than 100 million Americans watched it. When it aired in West Germany in 1979, 20 million viewers tuned in, and the nation had such an intense reaction that it led to political discussions and changes. The role earned Meryl her first Emmy. In 1979, her career began accelerating at incredible speed. She appeared in 3 films: Manhattan, The Seduction of Joe Tynan, and Kramer vs. Kramer. Each role was different, each voice distinct, and each performance carefully crafted. It was during this period that she later recalled difficult moments involving Dustin Hoffman, describing them in interviews as uncomfortable and, at times, upsetting. She shared that certain intense acting choices made during scenes, such as unexpected slaps or emotional confrontations, left her startled and hurt. She explained that these moments were never addressed at the time because she was young and trying to prove herself in a competitive environment. Her later reflections did not accuse Hoffman of crimes but described what the experience felt like from her perspective. Many people were surprised by her honesty because she had stayed silent about it for 40 years. Those early years were full of passion, pain, transformation, and extraordinary work. They shaped Meryl Streep into someone driven by authenticity, emotional truth, and the belief that an actor must feel deeply in order to perform honestly. Through personal loss, artistic triumphs, and difficult professional moments, she became one of the most respected performers in history, carrying lessons from her past into every role she played afterward. She had already amazed people with how easily she could transform herself, but in 1979 she reached an entirely new level. In 3 films, she played characters who could not have been more different from each other: a woman exploring her sexuality as a bisexual ex-wife, a sharp and determined labor lawyer, and a heartbroken mother fighting for her child in a painful custody battle. She didn't just perform the roles, she disappeared inside them. Critics said no one had done what she did that year. She changed her face, her voice, and her emotional energy until she no longer looked like the same person from one film to the next. That year she won her first Academy Award, and reviewers started calling her a chameleon because she could transform so completely. The shy girl who once had frizzy hair, glasses, and a fragile singing voice had become one of the most respected performers of her generation. Dustin Hoffman's story began long before he ever stepped on a stage. He was born on August 8, 1937 in Los Angeles, but even before he took his first breath, his family history was already shaped by fear, migration, and survival. His grandparents fled violent persecution in Romania and Ukraine, escaping pogroms that had threatened Jewish families for generations. They arrived at Ellis Island carrying trauma, uncertainty, and very little else. His mother, Lillian, once dreamed of becoming a jazz pianist, but gave up that dream to raise her children. His father, Harry, worked at Columbia Pictures selling furniture for only $45 a week. The family never stayed in one place long. They moved 7 times before Dustin reached the age of 12. Each time they moved, money became tighter. There were days when food ran low, and the humiliation of poverty sat silently at the dinner table. Growing up in Pasadena during the 1940s wasn't easy for a boy with a Jewish name and features that classmates felt free to make fun of. Dustin was called Dusty in a mocking way, teased for his nose, and often made to feel like he didn't belong. He was short, only about 5'6", and walked with a slight hunch, carrying the weight of feeling like an outsider. But the pain he felt growing up eventually sharpened into something powerful, something he later turned into emotional depth in every role he played. His early life taught him intensity, vulnerability, and how to use hurt as fuel. At 19, after spending 2 years pretending to study music at Santa Monica City College, he realized he could not keep living a life that didn't feel real. He dropped out, even though the decision felt reckless. His parents had already spent $600, money they really didn't have, on his tuition. Dustin felt guilty and paid them back by working whatever jobs he could find. He pumped gas for $1.25 an hour and later worked in a mental hospital watching over patients for $48 a week. He managed to save $300, which was everything he had in the world at that moment. One day in 1958, he made a decision that would change his life. He took a Greyhound bus across the country to New York City with no real plan, no apartment waiting for him, and nothing but a suitcase and a fragile dream that maybe he could become an actor. In New York, the struggle was constant. He slept on benches in subway stations, paid 50 cents to shower at the YMCA, and picked up whatever work he could find. He waited tables at Howard Johnson's in Times Square for $42 a week plus tips. Out of that small paycheck, he handed over $15 every month to take classes at Lee Strasberg's Actors Studio. Strasberg demanded total emotional honesty, pushing students to dig deep into their memories and feelings. One day, Dustin broke down in front of the entire class, crying for 45 minutes as he talked about the death of his grandmother. When he finished, something had changed. He realized that acting wasn't just pretending, it was pulling from real wounds, using truth as the foundation for every performance. His early theater work paid almost nothing. His first off-Broadway role earned him $35 a week and closed after 23 performances. A critic wrote that he seemed painfully amateurish. His second play paid $50 a week. In 1965, he shared a rundown apartment with Gene Hackman and Robert Duvall. The three young actors split a $75 rent, cooked cans of beans on a single hot plate, and went to hundreds of auditions. That year alone, Dustin made a total of $860 from acting, barely enough to survive. A small break came in 1966 when he landed a role in Journey of the Fifth Horse, which paid $175 a week. The reviews were excellent. Critics praised him. But even with the recognition, the fear that he wouldn't make enough money lingered. When the production ended after 95 shows, he panicked. He even filled out a job application to sell insurance for $9,500 a year, thinking that maybe acting simply wasn't possible for him. That same year, however, he booked a single television episode for the Star Wagon. It paid $1,200, more than he had earned in 6 months. It gave him a flicker of hope. In 1967, he married Ann Byrne, and they already had a daughter, Karina, who had been born in March 1966. Money was tight, and diapers alone cost $12 a week. Dustin missed his daughter's first birthday because he was sleeping in Central Park to research a homeless character. For another role, he refused to talk to and for 11 days to stay inside the emotional state of the character he was playing. Gene Hackman later said that Dustin would spend 8 to 10 hours a day talking to himself in character, barely eating. The intense method acting strained the marriage. And filed separation papers twice before they finally divorced in 1980, after years of trying to make things work. Late in 1966, director Mike Nichols was searching for someone fresh and unknown to play Benjamin Braddock in The Graduate. Robert Redford looked too polished. Warren Beatty wanted too much money. Producer Lawrence Terman saw Hoffman on stage and felt drawn to him. Dustin was 29, auditioning to play a 21-year-old college student. He showed up late and sweating, accidentally knocked over a glass of water, and stumbled nervously through the lines. But strangely, it worked. He looked and felt awkward in exactly the way Benjamin Braddock needed to be. Nichols saw something special in him. After 3 callbacks and several screen tests, Hoffman was offered the role for $17,000, more than he had made in his entire life. When filming began in June 1967, he felt anxious and overwhelmed. He barely slept and kept telling himself he didn't deserve the part. When Gene Hackman was fired from the film after only 3 weeks, Dustin thought he was next. But he wasn't. The movie worked beautifully. When The Graduate premiered, it exploded in popularity. It earned $14.4 million at the box office and became the biggest film of the year. But Hoffman's pay after taxes was only about $4,000. He even had to file for unemployment while his face appeared on theater posters across the country. Even so, the film changed his life. He received his first Oscar nomination and suddenly became the voice of a young generation that questioned authority and doubted the values of its parents. Then came Midnight Cowboy, where he played Ratso Rizzo, a sick, struggling street hustler. One of the film's most famous lines, "I'm walking here," was not scripted. A real taxi almost hit him during filming, and Dustin slapped the hood and yelled in character. The director, John Schlesinger, had hidden the camera inside a van and wasn't prepared for the near accident, but the moment worked so well they used it in the final cut. To make Ratso's limp believable, Hoffman put small pebbles in his shoe every day. In Little Big Man, he played a character who aged from 17 to 121. The makeup took 5 hours each day. Makeup artist Dick Smith studied photographs of elderly people to design every wrinkle. Dustin strained his voice by practicing for hours in cars and empty rooms, trying to make himself sound ancient. During one long monologue about Custer, they filmed take after take until he was physically shaking with exhaustion. Though he was only in his early 30s, he transformed so thoroughly into an old man that people were shocked by how convincing he appeared. Then came Straw Dogs, another demanding role that pushed him emotionally and physically. Through all these performances, Dustin Hoffman built a career based on risk, intensity, and absolute commitment. His path was never easy, never smooth, and never simple, but he carried the pain of his past, the struggles of his early years, and the determination of someone who refused to accept defeat. These experiences shaped him into an actor whose honesty, vulnerability, and raw emotion changed American film forever. Hoffman played a quiet mathematician who slowly reaches his breaking point. The intense violence in the film affected him deeply. Director Sam Peckinpah wanted the rawest emotions possible, and Hoffman delivered them, but it took a real emotional toll. He even tried hard to recast the lead actress because he worried the story was becoming too dark and exploitative. Hoffman, who believed strongly in peace and nonviolence, now had to play a man drowning in anger. The home invasion scenes, the assault scenes, they felt uncomfortably real to him. But the movie made an impact. It caused huge controversy yet won major praise. By 1974, Hoffman transformed again, this time into comedian Lenny Bruce. He lost 15 pounds and moved around like a ghost, drained and wired. In one famous 10-minute scene, he wore only a raincoat and one sock, speaking in a frantic, broken rhythm. It was filmed in one take. Critics would later call it one of the greatest scenes ever shot. Every word about censorship, fear, and death hit painfully deep. Hoffman earned his 3rd Oscar nomination for the performance. Director Bob Fosse filmed it all in black and white, giving it the feeling of fading life. Then came All the President's Men, where Hoffman and Robert Redford uncovered the Watergate scandal. Hoffman chain-smoked through many scenes, helping create the tired, paranoid atmosphere of the newsroom. The clacking typewriters and whispered background conversations added to the tension. Redford and Hoffman were often placed at awkward angles in scenes to show how different they were before eventually learning to work together. The film won awards and was later preserved for its cultural importance. But Hoffman didn't care much for labels, he was always chasing something deeper and more honest. For Marathon Man, he pushed his body again, losing even more weight and running half a mile before each take so he would look physically stressed. During the torture scenes, he allowed himself to be held underwater until he desperately needed air. When Laurence Olivier learned Hoffman had stayed awake for 72 hours to look exhausted, he told him kindly, "Try acting, dear boy. It's much easier." In Straight Time, Hoffman played an ex-convict so convincingly that he frightened some of his castmates. The story came from Edward Bunker, a real former prisoner, and Hoffman worked closely with him. Hoffman lived for months as if he were truly on parole, studying how men in that world walked, talked, and reacted. He even took over directing parts of the film, causing tension with the original director. His co-star Harry Dean Stanton admitted that one improvised robbery scene shook him deeply. Then came Agatha, the movie about Agatha Christie's missing days. Hoffman played a journalist but caused major stress on set. He requested rewrite after rewrite, delaying production for weeks. Vanessa Redgrave grew frustrated. Characters were rewritten and scenes changed constantly. The screenwriter, Kathleen Tynan, felt heartbroken watching her script fall apart. After more than a year of difficulties, the film released in 1979 and received only one Oscar nomination for its costumes. That same year, Hoffman remarried. His wife Lisa brought calm into his life, and together they had 4 children. Their son Jacob, born in March 1981, struggled at birth because his lungs were underdeveloped. Hoffman spent hours at the hospital, frightened but hopeful. The family stayed close despite the challenges, and Lisa remained a grounding force, even as Hoffman's intense acting style sometimes made life unpredictable. On the set of Tootsie, director Sidney Pollack joked that he would give up his Oscar if he could reclaim the 9 months of stress Hoffman caused him. Terry Garr described Hoffman as controlling and overwhelming at times. He simply couldn't step out of his characters. By 1979, Hoffman was 42 and had earned more than $50 million from his films, building a huge career from nothing. But there were always quiet discussions about how difficult he could be on set, how far he would push others while chasing the perfect performance. Then came Kramer vs. Kramer, filmed in New York City on an $8 million budget. At first, Hoffman didn't want the role at all. He was in the middle of his own painful divorce and felt drained. Many big actors had already turned the part down. But while filming Agatha in London, he met director Robert Benton, and finally agreed. Once he committed, he poured everything into the movie. He pushed for filming in real apartments, not sets. He added personal details from his own life, so many that Benton even offered him a co-writing credit, which Hoffman declined. His scenes with the young boy, Justin Henry, were unscripted. Hoffman personally taught him how to act. The famous no ice cream scene was completely improvised. Meryl Streep was not the original choice for Joanna. The role was meant for Kate Jackson, but her TV schedule didn't allow it. Streep had only been chosen for a small part at first. When she auditioned for the lead, Hoffman and Benton knew instantly she was the right choice. But Streep didn't want Joanna to seem like a cruel mother, she wanted her to feel human and understandable. She fought hard for that, even rewriting parts of the courtroom speech herself. The filming, however, was emotionally difficult. Hoffman's intense style sometimes went too far. He argued heavily with actress Gail Strickland during rehearsals, causing so much distress that she eventually left the film and was replaced by Jane Alexander. Streep, still grieving the recent loss of her partner John Cazale, arrived on set emotionally fragile. During her second day of filming, Hoffman slapped her without warning during a scene. The moment was real and stayed in the film. Streep was stunned and upset. In another scene, Hoffman shattered a real wine glass without telling anyone beforehand, and shards flew into Streep's hair. She finished the scene professionally, then calmly told him she wished he had warned her. The most painful moment came during the courtroom scenes when Hoffman whispered Cazale into her ear before the camera rolled, using her grief to provoke emotion. Streep later said she felt deeply violated by that. Still, the film succeeded. When it premiered in December 1979, it became a massive hit. It earned over $100 million and became the top-grossing film of the year. At the 1980 Oscars, it won 5 awards. Hoffman won Best Actor. Streep won Best Supporting Actress. In her speech, she thanked the director but did not mention Hoffman. Hoffman gave an unusual, passionate acceptance speech. Behind the scenes, though, the emotional cost was heavy. Streep had endured harassment, emotional pressure, and real physical discomfort. She stayed silent for decades, staying professional and moving forward with her career. And she rose higher than ever expected. In 1983, she won her second Oscar. Over her career, she earned more Academy Award nominations than any actor in history. She chose roles with depth and strength and never relied on painful methods or mistreatment to reach brilliance. In 2017, many years later, new stories about Hoffman surfaced. A woman named Anna Graham Hunter came forward about being harassed by him when she was a 17-year-old intern. More women shared their experiences. His lawyers denied everything. In 2018, Streep finally spoke about what happened on the Kramer vs. Kramer set. Nearly 40 years later, she said quietly, "It was my first movie. It was my first take. And he just slapped me." She described it as an overstep, a reminder of a time when women were expected to stay quiet, no matter what they went through. But Streep did not let that experience define her. She built her career with strength, dignity, and remarkable talent. No slap, no broken glass, No whispered name could take away what she created or who she became.